If I only knew. By Wanderlove. Chapter 4. Today is the day, Obi-Wan decides grimly. He has sent Anakin away with Quinlan's padawan, Ayla Secura, hoping the older girl can keep Anakin distracted long enough to afford him precious hours of uninterrupted meditation. And he desperately needs those hours to prepare himself. He's put it off as long as he dares. Quinlan had given this particular lecture to Ayla when she was 12, and Anakin is now 15 years old. But after walking in on a frenetic masturbation session in the Sonic last week, Obi-Wan can no longer deny the necessity of the conversation. He has to give Anakin the talk. It only takes hours and hours of careful meditation, but finally Obi-Wan thinks he's ready. It's not a moment too soon, as Anakin comes careening back into their shared quarters, shattering the air of peaceful contemplation. Master Ood allowed Ayla and I to test fly the new Ether Sprites, Anakin declares, getting exhilaration flying across the barn as he skids to a stop in the kitchen and begins rummaging through the cabinets. And I trust you repaid Master Ood's kindness by returning the starfighters fully intact? Ah, Master, you're hilarious, Anakin says as he stuffs 3 packets of dried shura fruit in his mouth. He turns around, cheeks puffed out comically. Really, Anakin? Obi-Wan scolds disapprovingly. Anakin chews and swallows quickly. Sorry, Master, I'm hungry. You're hungry all the time nowadays. Obi-Wan sighs as he examines Anakin closely, who is now nearly equal in height to his master. Has the boy somehow managed to grow even taller since Obi-Wan last saw him a few hours ago? A medical impossibility for humans, the healers assure him, but still Obi-Wan wonders. You will hardly waste away if you tried chewing your food at a civilized pace. Never mind, he says, raising his hand to forestall the inevitable round of bickering his comment will set off. Come sit down, Anakin. We have something to discuss. Anakin looks wary now, his expression reflecting the feeling coiling in Obi-Wan's chest. He settles himself cross-legged on the meditation mats awkwardly and looks expectantly to his master. Obi-Wan sends a quick request for strength into the Force and focuses on his task. Anakin, I know the healers have talked with you about your changing body. He begins only to be immediately interrupted. Is this about the Sonic? I promised to be more careful. Anakin complains. He seems unembarrassed. So far, so good. Obi-Wan has more than enough embarrassment for the both of them. It is related, Obi-Wan concedes, but there are some lectures that the healers leave to the discretion of a Padawan's master, and I realize that I have failed you by not bringing it up earlier. All of the changes to your body mean that you might start feeling strange urges, and especially in relation to other Padawans your own age. And I want to make sure that you understand your body and these urges. So this is about sex! Anakin interrupts him again, unashamed. Obi-Wan chokes on thin air and feels himself turning red. Yes, Padawan, yes. I must make sure that you understand that you may start to feel attracted to other beings. You may have strange dreams and want to reenact these dreams with those beings you find attractive. But you must keep 2 things in mind. First, you must take care to keep these dalliances casual. The Jedi Code does not forbid sexual congress, only attachment. But it can be easy to become attached, especially to the first person you explore your body with. Dear Force, Obi-Wan didn't even know that it was physically possible to be this embarrassed. He inhales deeply and pushes forward. There is no way out but through. Second, and most importantly, you must both consent to the activity at hand. Even if you find them attractive, the feelings may not be reciprocated. There are many beings and many sexualities. Some beings will not want you in particular, others are not interested in human males, and still others yet may not be interested in physical congress at all. What? Like, force them? I would never do that, Anakin says, horrified. I know, Padawan. Obi-Wan rushes to reassure him. But as Jedi, we must take special care. Our powers make it easy for us to hurt or force our partners, even unintentionally. Sometimes even the suggestion of power is enough to force someone to make a decision they wouldn't normally. They might be encouraged to say yes because they believe your strength in the Force or connections to powerful Jedi Masters could help them. At this, Anakin narrows his eyes, confusion buzzing along the back of the bond. But as long as I do help them, shouldn't that be okay? He says. We both know what we're agreeing to. What? No, Anakin. Can you imagine how you would feel if someone much more powerful than you, someone that you didn't particularly like or find attractive, asked you to sleep with them in exchange for something you wanted? If it was something you really truly wanted, you'd feel obligated. I mean, if I thought they would help Mom or you, I don't think I'd care all that much, Anakin says with a shrug. If they were really repulsive, I don't think I'd enjoy it very much, but it's just sex. Obi-Wan stares at him, opening and closing his mouth a couple times. Is this a slave thing? He finally asks, bewildered. Over the years, they've had many misunderstandings about the variety of topics related to Anakin's past, and they've developed a shorthand so that either of them can speak up and indicate it to the other that they truly don't understand what's going on. I guess, Anakin says, squaring up his face. Don't know. I know everyone here is super weird and secretive about sex, not at all like Tatooine. Can't you explain it to me? I know it might be hard. Well, it's like this. I'm really strong on the Force, right? And I really enjoy katas and training and finding out what I can do. But it also makes a lot of people look at me funny, not because they want me, but because they want me to do something for them. I don't always enjoy it or want to do it, but I do it anyway because I know they can offer me something in return. Sex is like that. I can do it because I enjoy it, but otherwise it's just something else that makes me useful. That's not totally a slave thing. Obi-Wan admits slowly. Despite himself, he can't quite dispel the discomfort Anakin's words raise. I know some knights and masters who think the same way, but I'll caution that not everyone looks at it that way. I want you to be very, very careful and very, very clear with your partners about what you expect from them. I can do that, Anakin affirms cheerily. Can I go to the Sonic now? I'm meeting the Chancellor in a couple of hours and I don't want to be late again. Obi-Wan nods his head distractedly, not quite able to name the coiling unease in his stomach. Hours later, Obi-Wan sits bolt upright in bed, mind racing! Up until now, he's let it lie despite his own misgivings, because he was confident that Anakin would come to him if he ever felt that the Chancellor had crossed the line into inappropriateness. And it's not that he doesn't trust Anakin, he does, it's just after that horrendous talk, Obi-Wan is starting to realize that Anakin will probably define that line much, much differently than most of the other Jedi. It's just that a powerful man has just spent 4 hours of his incredibly valuable time and hundreds of credits to take his Padawan to a nice upper-level Coruscanti restaurant, and Anakin has a terribly transactional view of intimacy. I mean, if I thought they would help Mom or you, I don't think I'd care all that much. Pounds through his head over and over and over again. His eyes widen as he remembers all the missions they've been assigned at the personal request of Chancellor Palpatine. The sort of important missions that have definitely helped cement Obi-Wan and Anakin's standing with not only the Jedi, but a whole host of other powerful people. I wish the Council would recognize how hard you work, Master, Anakin whispers in his head. You're as powerful as Master Windu and as wise as Master Yoda. You shouldn't be assigned to be a mere bodyguard. Obi-Wan rushes to the threshold to throw up the entire contents of his stomach. He sits for a moment, forehead resting against the cool metal of the toilet, panting as tears leak out of the corners of his eyes. He allows himself a few seconds of painful, gut-wrenching sobs, then inhales sharply and hides it all away behind the facade of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the perfect Jedi Knight. He splashes water on his face, dons a Jedi robe, and hurriedly tiptoes out of his quarters. He knows Anakin loves to follow him and eavesdrop on his conversations, but this is one conversation he cannot be allowed to overhear. He pounds on the door to Mace Windu's quarters until the door slides back to reveal a positively livid Master Windu, his sleep robes askew and still blinking sleep from his eyes. His eyes narrow at Obi-Wan. "Those had better be good, Kenobi," he warns. "I think the Chancellor might be abusing my Padawan," Obi-Wan blurts out. To his credit, Master Windu immediately straightens, all annoyance gone in a single instant. He steps to the side and motions for Obi-Wan to follow him inside. Skywalker made an accusation. "No!" Obi-Wan admits, rhythmically clenching and unclenching his fists as Master Windu settles into the couch and Obi-Wan begins to pace in front of him. "But I finally gave Anakin the required lecture on intimacy and sexuality and realized that he views sexual experiences very differently than you or I." "Differently?" Master Windu asks, raising an eyebrow.
He views his sexuality as a sort of tool to get what he wants. He stated that even if he personally wasn't interested, he'd lie with someone if he believed they would give him something else he wanted afterwards. I explained that pressuring someone into sex like that was wrong, a form of rape, but he had a hard time grasping the concept, which, if that's how he wants to approach sex as an adult, that's fine, but he's underage and we have been allowing him to spend his free time around an older, more powerful male who has an unlimited ability to give him anything he could possibly want in exchange for sexual favors.
Master Windu finishes looking pale. Obi-Wan stops his pacing and nods, his shoulders slump, eyes trained on the ground.
Anakin has repeatedly suggested that he feels indebted to me for taking him on as my padawan when no one else believed he should be trained, and that he hopes to repay me someday, that I deserve recognition.
Obi-Wan whispers hoarsely, words barely audible.
And I've noticed that lately, I've been assigned more and more desirable missions, specifically at the request of the Chancellor.
Obi-Wan,
Master Windu says harshly, standing to his feet.
Stop that thought. This situation is not your fault.
Whose fault is it, if not mine?
Obi-Wan responds just as harsh.
There's plenty of blame to go around myself, the Council, the Chancellor. No need to take on all of it. Besides, it will not be very helpful at resolving the immediate problem.
Which is?
First, we must stop Skywalker's visits with the Chancellor. If he asks why, feel free to drop my name. I know he dislikes me, and I doubt this will damage our relationship any further. Second, we must determine what has happened so far. If it was just a terrible misunderstanding, the beginnings of something much worse, or if legal action will need to be taken.
What am I supposed to say to Anakin?
Obi-Wan asks, eyes wide in panic.
Hello, Padawan, my lovely meditation session we had there. By the way, have you ever quizzed the Chancellor of the Republic?
Well, I'd go for a tad more subtlety than that,
Master Windu says dryly.
But based on what you told me about Skywalker's utilitarian approach to sexuality, they'd probably answer honestly.
Obi-Wan laughs, half hysterical, and collapses to the ground. Mace Windu stares at him.
Correction,
Master Windu says.
First, you must get some rest. You're in no shape to raise the issue with Padawan Skywalker.
I don't think I could sleep even if I wanted to,
Obi-Wan admits shakily.
Luckily for you, I keep several hyper shops of prescription-strength sedatives on hand.
Master Windu says, already moving to the fresher and sorting through his medicine cabinet.
Come now, Obi-Wan, you can take the couch.
Obi-Wan follows his instructions numbly, alter grateful for the faint sting in his neck that will soon carry him into the dark. The next morning brings little peace with it. Obi-Wan wakes suddenly and stares muzzily up at the ceiling for several long heartbeats, the same terrible, overwhelming feeling overshadowing every breath.
You'll just have to ask him,
Master Windu advises him once Obi-Wan has levered himself upward and managed to swallow a few bites of tasteless oatmeal. You can't tell if the tastelessness is yet another manifestation of the worry eating his insides, or because he's so used to Anakin's spiced version of oatmeal, which makes every other dish seem flavorless in comparison.
You'll run yourself to the ground if you spend too long on what-ifs. Better just to know whether it's good or bad news and deal with it head on. I can go with you.
He adds, That's a kind offer, Master Windu,
Obi-Wan says wanly.
But you're right when you said Anakin doesn't like you very much. If the worst has truly happened and I must discuss it with him, I don't think he'd want you there.
Fair enough,
Master Windu says.
But you will call me as soon as you determine what we're dealing with, yes? I can a tzai ready in a matter of minutes for a full physical and mental evaluation.
I'll calm you,
Obi-Wan confirms, standing to his feet. Master Windu mirrors his pose and escorts him to the door of his quarters, worry etched in every line of his face. Every footstep back to his quarters feels like he has a heavy weight attached to his ankles, but somehow he makes it there. He stares blankly at the door for a moment, but then screws up his courage. This isn't about him, Sith hells. It's about Anakin, and waves his hand over the pad for entry. The door slides open and reveals Anakin sleepily consuming his breakfast. He perks up visibly upon spotting Obi-Wan. Master! He greets happily. Where were you? I'm sorry I didn't make enough breakfast for two. I assumed you'd be gone until midday, but I can make some extra.
There's no need for that, Obi-Wan,
Obi-Wan responds, touched. The door automatically slides shut behind him, and to Obi-Wan it seems like a death knell.
I was at Master Windu's quarters, and we had breakfast before I left.
Oh, that's good then. Why were you there? Anakin asks, suspiciously. He seems to be running through a list in his head, and Obi-Wan would be willing to bet he's carefully cataloging everything he's done over the past few weeks, trying to determine what he's done to irritate Master Windu this time around.
We were discussing your friendship with Chancellor,
Obi-Wan says carefully.
Can we talk, Anakin? It is very important.
Yes. I mean, isn't that what we're doing?
Impertinence is not a good look on you, my very young padawan,
Obi-Wan snipes without thinking.
Well, I learned from the best, so you only have yourself to blame.
Anakin teases back. Okay, I'm listening, Master. What's the matter?
That is, some of the masters and I, have become concerned with your friendship with the Chancellor. I'd ask that you stop visiting him for now, or at least that you take another night or myself with you when you do.
Why?
On Coruscant, it is very odd for an older man to have such a close friendship with a young boy your age,
Obi-Wan says, carefully choosing each and every word. He cannot mess this up. He must make Anakin understand. He is all too aware of the possibility that if he simply puts his foot down and refuses to allow their visits, Anakin might take that as a challenge and choose to sneak around, carrying on the relationship in shadows.
There's really only a limited number of legitimate reasons why it might happen, and you two don't fit easily into any of them. It has been suggested that the relationship might not be entirely proper.
What? So I'm supposed to stop seeing one of my few real friends because some other politician got their knickers on a twist? Anakin scoffs. I don't care what they think.
Anakin, you might not care, but the Chancellor most certainly will. These suggestions, they're not harmless. They're the kind that might end his political career.
And that does the trick, appealing to Anakin's loyalty and innate protectiveness. His Padawan sits up straighter, frowning. What exactly do they think is going on? He asks.
I'm going to need you to be honest with me, Anakin, Obi-Wan warns. I'm about to ask you a lot of questions, with both our shields fully down. I want to understand not just your answers to these questions, but how they make you feel. And sometimes it might be hard to describe exactly what happened, and if that happens, you could just push forward the memories across the bond, so that I can look them over.
All my shields. Anakin hesitates.
I won't look where I'm not invited, but it is very, very important.
Anakin nods, closes his eyes, and complies. Obi-Wan very nearly staggers under the onslaught of Anakin's unshielded force presence. He sometimes forgets exactly how powerful Anakin is. He gives himself a second to adjust until he can pick out Anakin's emotions: bewilderment, anxious, anger, determination.
Okay, let's start. What do you and the Chancellor do when you're alone?
Lots of things. Sometimes we go places like a restaurant or an opera. He really likes the Moncala Ballet for some reason. But a lot of times we just sit in his office or apartment and talk.
You've been to his apartment?
Obi-Wan asks sharply. In response, Anakin pushes two images. A richly appointed maroon and silver living room with a wide sweeping window, followed closely by the blurry image of a darkened bedroom, the only light emanating from light sconces turned low.
You've been inside his bedroom.
Yeah, if it's super late or we've just come back from a mission and my body's internal clock is still whacked, he just lets me sleep on the bed. Obi-Wan bites back a spiky burst of rage. Master, you do know that with both our shields down, I can feel you. Obi-Wan pastes on a pleasant smile.
Of course, my apologies, he says smoothly. What do you and the Chancellor talk about?
What could a grown man possibly have to discuss with you? He doesn't say. How my training is going, how I'm adjusting to the Jedi, our missions. He'll just listen to me complain sometimes and know exactly what to say to make me feel better.
I see, Obi-Wan says. Have you ever asked for anything from him?
Not exactly. Anakin squirms both in the physical sense and in the bond, twisting and slipping around Obi-Wan in the Force. Like I've never asked for something, but he always seems to know what I want and give it to me without asking.
Like what?
Obi-Wan asks flatly. Well, do you remember when I was complaining that the Council was holding us back about a year ago? That we hadn't got any really good missions in a while? I know I messed up on Tanab, but I couldn't prove that I learned from my mistakes if they wouldn't give us another mission. And I explained all that to the Chancellor, and he just sort of smiled and said that he would talk to the Council. And the next thing I knew, we got that investigative assignment at the Kuwait shipyards.
And did the Chancellor ever ask for anything in return for his intervention?
Obi-Wan's heart is in his throat, slamming so hard against the thin skin below his chin that he is half afraid it will just leap out of the side of his body. Nah, Anakin says. Obi-Wan almost sighs in relief, but then notices the distinctly uncomfortable feeling like black tar flooding across the bond. His eyes narrow. Anakin, he says, firmly, warningly. What? He didn't, I swear.
No, he wouldn't have.
Obi-Wan mutters out loud, more to himself than Anakin.
He's an accomplished politician. He knows 100 ways to imply what he wants without ever having to come out and say it.
It wasn't like that, Anakin insists, but it's half-hearted. It's just that once he started doing that, I felt like I sort of had to visit whenever he offered. He kept telling me how lonely he was and how much he looked forward to talking to him. That some days it felt like I was the only person he could talk to. He's really nice and all, but I also like hanging out with Isla and the other senior Padawans in my free time. And I couldn't always because I was so busy with missions and coursework and visiting him. And he started looking at me weird, like, I don't know. It just made me feel weird. And I know he's curious about my training. He has this side hobby researching the old Jedi Order and other Force-sensitive sects throughout history. So I offered to show him a kata one day, only I wished afterwards I hadn't done it at all. It felt wrong.
Did you take your tunic off for the kata?
Anakin nods and Obi-Wan closes his eyes. Anakin had learned that particular habit from him. He'd always overheated easily during training, so he often went shirtless, and eventually Anakin had begun copying him. Obi-Wan wants to claw off his skin. Yeah, he also likes to praise me for, everything. Really, really loudly. I really enjoyed it at first, but you and Mom are always talking about how praise has to be earned to really mean something, and I've definitely not done anything to earn it.
And did the Chancellor ever try to touch you? Or ask you to touch him?
Anakin winces and pushes a memory of being in the Chancellor's office, looking out over the amazing vista of Coruscant, the Chancellor standing a little too close behind him, his hands resting on Anakin's shoulders, feeling more like claws. There's nothing inherently sexual about the motion, more proprietary, as if he owns Anakin. But Anakin is clearly projecting his discomfort and trying to edge to the side without insulting the Chancellor. The other man seems more amused at Anakin's attempts to escape and only digs his hands in harder. And Obi-Wan wants to be reassured that this is the memory that first pops into Anakin's mind. But he also understands how Anakin thinks well enough by now to realize that Anakin would be more discomfited by a touch indicating ownership than he ever would be by a flirtatious or potentially sexual overture.
And is that all?
Obi-Wan presses. He purses his lips and realizes that he's just going to have to come out and say it.
Did you ever touch him or have him touch you in a asexual way?
What? Ew, no! Anakin replies quickly, and the honesty of his response rings through the Force, and Obi-Wan feels as if a giant weight has lifted from his chest. No, he's not interested in me like that. At least I don't think so. He doesn't seem very certain, but shakes his head and continues. Honestly, the only thing he really ever asked from me was for me to keep some secrets from you.
Oh, really?
Obi-Wan says, trying very hard to maintain his calm.
Like what?
I promise not to say. Anakin sounds apologetic.
I don't care.
Obi-Wan responds flatly.
You promised me to be honest. So I ask again. Like what?
Mostly little stuff at first. Like, you and I would have a fight and I'd complain to him, but he'd ask me not to talk to you about what I said. I'd say some pretty nasty things I didn't really mean. So I thought it made sense. But then it escalated. He'd take me out and told me to lie and say I'd been somewhere else, or say that the meeting had only lasted a few minutes instead of hours. He told me that if I was angry or scared, I should just come straight to him. That you and the Jedi wouldn't understand, so I shouldn't even bother trying to ask you for advice. It always made sense when he explained it, but I still felt terrible. There's a dark and oily wrongness spilling across the bond.
I can understand that, Obi-Wan says. It was wrong of him to ask that of you.
Really? Relief pours across the bond. I thought so, but I didn't know for sure and I couldn't ask you.
You can always ask me.
Obi-Wan interrupts, wanting to make sure that this point was absolutely crystal clear.
I cannot emphasize enough how wrong it was for the Chancellor to ask that of you. How wrong all of what you described to me was. There's a word for what he's doing, and it's called grooming. Has anyone ever discussed this with you?
Anakin shakes his head mute.
Authority figures do it to young children or other people under their power, encouraging feelings of dependence and loyalty to the abuser, acclimating them to abusive behavior bit by bit, while simultaneously isolating the child from the support network.
He didn't abuse me, though, Anakin says in a small voice. You saw my memories, he didn't.
No, not yet. But grooming often precedes abuse. That's its purpose, so the child feels they have no one else they can turn to once the abuse starts, so that they accept the situation without question because of a carefully cultivated sense of personal loyalty and helplessness. Can you honestly tell me that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had this conversation with you?
No, Anakin admits, shame flooding their bond.
No, dear one,
Obi-Wan says fiercely.
You have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. You didn't understand what was going on, but the Chancellor definitely did. If anyone is to blame, it is him and myself for allowing it to go on as long as I have. But not anymore. You are not to see him again, not under any circumstances, do you understand?
Anakin nods slowly, reluctantly. He bites his lip. Don't you think that'll make him angry, though? If you accuse him of such horrible things, I'm sure he didn't really mean to do it. He was just being nice and got carried away. But he might get angry and say something bad about us to the council. And then they'll be angry with us too, and I know that's not good for your career.
Anakin, don't worry about any of this, Obi-Wan instructs. Even if that was a possibility, it would be my responsibility to handle it, one I would gladly take. But I think the Chancellor has given you an overinflated view of his sway over the council. Yes, he got us assigned to better missions by dropping a suggestion here or there, but that's all they were. Suggestions from a powerful man, ones the council only followed because they saw no reason not to. But suffice to say, if that same powerful man was suddenly to want to take retribution because he was denied regular, unfettered access to a teenage boy, well, that suggestion would not go over nearly as well.
Oh, when you put it like that, it sounds pretty bad.
Exactly, and that's why I'm confident it will not come to that. Chancellor Palpatine is a politician, a very good one based on the fact that he has risen to the most powerful position in the galaxy. He knows very well how it looks, and how even the insinuation of improper behavior would destroy his career. It would lead to a vote of no confidence at the very least. Even if the measure doesn't pass, it would destroy his standing for the remainder of his term, and it is very unlikely he'd win re-election. Once the council makes clear that the visits must stop, he will drop the issue.
There is a beat of too loud silence. So, what now? Anakin asks. Obi-Wan pastes a gentle smile on his face.
Now I will send you off to run through some Makashi katas. I want you to keep your mind and hands busy for the next couple of hours, and Fours knows your form could use some work. I will use that time to start taking the necessary steps. I'll talk to the council, let them know what has happened, so that he won't be able to contact you again.
A flare of hastily concealed guilt, and Obi-Wan's head snaps up.
What was that, Padawan?
I might sorta have the Chancellor's personal com. Anakin admits in a rush. Obi-Wan closes his eyes and pinches the bridge of his nose.
In that case, I'm going to need your comlink, Obi-Wan says. I'll have another unit assigned to you as soon as possible. And you're going to have to talk to a mind healer. You understand that, don't you?
Really, Master? Anakin's overdramatic groan is not quite enough to bring a genuine smile to Obi-Wan's face. Not with everything else going on, but it certainly comes close.
Yes, really. Now, comlink, then off to the training salles with you,
Obi-Wan says sternly. Anakin obeys, loping into his bedroom to pick up the comm unit in question and drop it into Obi-Wan's open hand. Obi-Wan waits until he is absolutely certain Anakin is gone before he flips open his own comm and contacts Master Windu. The other Jedi picks up on the first ring, as if he was waiting for the call.
Yes,
Master Windu asks, carefully scanning Obi-Wan's grim face.
It's not the worst possible scenario, but it's bad. I will need the council to run interference.
of course, whatever you need. Do you want me to call an emergency session?
Yes! Obi-Wan hesitates, then breaks down, his words spilling out in choked off sobs. He was grooming Anakin for force knows what, for force knows how many years, and I never even noticed. How could I not notice? Obi-Wan hangs up so that Master Windu can focus on wrangling the council and not on the Jedi Knight breaking down in front of him. How could I not notice? He repeats to the empty room.